Welcome to Salcedo Paranormal. It is Friday, February 25th, 2022. And tonight I will be talking about a movie, Beetlejuice, my favorite movie. Of course, for all information and episodes of the podcast, you can visit salcedoparanormal.podbean.com. And that's SALSIDO. And normally I would go into more detail about that, but everything's there for you all to find. So I think I just want to get to tonight's show. You won't hear this unless you've been here in the live stream, but had a string of technical difficulties, which is ironic considering what we're going to be talking about tonight in a way. But like I said, I'm doing this review, but I'm not doing this alone. I want to welcome Jen Hawkins into the stream. Hello, Jen.
Hey, James. How are you?
I'm better now. Better
Good.
now. So, yeah, so we've been talking about this for a while now. And I'm really glad that you wanted to cover this with me because I don't mind doing these myself, but it's always great when you can have a conversation about something.
Yes. Yes. And I think the movie, people don't think about it as much as they did at one point. There was a whole cartoon series and the release of all the toys and everything way back when it first came out. And it's kind of gone quiet, but I think it's a great time for it to come up again.
Yeah, and it's been coming up in other shows, at least topics related to it that we'll get into here tonight. So, let me pull up that file again that I had earlier, and then we can start going over the review. But if you want to first, because you have your own YouTube channel, if you want to tell everybody a little bit about that, you're welcome to.
Okay. Yeah, I started a little YouTube channel several months back, and I haven't really done a lot with it recently, but at some point I intend to pick it back up again and try to carry it some which way. Maybe break into doing live conversations. I cover topics about the kind of similar to James here, and covering the paranormal and just everyday oddities and conspiracies about about basically anything. So and anybody can check that out on YouTube. It's right now under just my name, but I'll probably end up changing that at some point.
Yeah, and I've listened to all the videos, and it's really so much information there. I really do like them. So great stuff.
Oh, thank you.
So again, I just want to mention there will be spoilers here. We're going to be discussing this movie, the plot, and then just whatever comes up along the way. So if anyone out there hasn't seen the movie and you would like to see it first, I would recommend that before you go on with this episode. But other than that, I think we can get into this now with the movie. So I'll start if you want, Jenny, and then you can just comment along the way as we're going to different points in the plot.
Sounds good.
Okay. So it starts out with this couple, Adam and Barbara Maitland, and the movie starts out with them in their house, basically doing a stay-at-home vacation to renovate it, and they go into town to the family store, hardware store, because there's also they have Adam has this full size. Well, I guess it won't be full size, but a model of the town in the area that he also works on, and so he wanted to go get something for that. So they go to the store, and on their way back, they're going back through this covered bridge, and a dog basically walks into the bridge, and Barbara, who is driving, swerves to avoid it, and they go off of the. They basically break through the side of the bridge and go into the water. So now before this, and I just forgot this little detail. Their real estate agent was trying to get them to sell the house because they basically it just seemed like they wanted to get more money out of it. But anyway, so yeah, that's basically how it starts and where everything starts. And that's kind of where the paranormal part starts in this movie. So, because after the movie shows their car going into the water in this, I guess, creek, or I'm not sure if it's a river or a creek, but it basically shows them walking back into their house. And they're all basically soaking wet. And that's where the weird stuff kind of starts in terms of there's a fire going in the fireplace that wasn't there before. They have no reflections in the mirror, which is interesting. I hadn't really heard that kind of comes and goes with ghost stuff. Sometimes they're seen in mirrors, other times they're not. Sometimes they're only seen in mirrors. So that was an interesting choice to me that they made with that.
Yeah. What I think that what's so interesting too that about Beetlejuice, about the movie, is that they had to completely redo the screenplay. Did you hear about, like, originally, I guess Michael McDowell had written the screenplay for Beetlejuice, but apparently it was too dark, and Tim Burton brought on, I can't remember his name now, but they rewrote the whole. Well, they didn't rewrite the whole script. They used a lot of different pieces in it, but it was supposed to be a little darker,
Oh,
supposedly.
interesting.
And I guess, yeah, I thought that was interesting. And in the opening scene, where it has it's really cool the way that they have the town presented, like the little model town, and you have like you think it's the town itself, kind of like in the scene where it kind of scans over the cemetery and over everything, and the river and everything, his perfect model of the town. But then you see like a giant spider come over, like a daddy long leg or something. You can tell that the scale is actually a model scale, and then you see the hand, Adam's hand too. I thought that was the symbology was really neat, kind of reaching in, kind of I don't know, kind of a macro micro thing going on there. I thought was kind of cool. And then
Yeah, and that
Rocket,
becomes yeah.
the dog, I guess. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no. Just
Oh,
that I thought that it's really interesting, the symbology of the dog at the bridge scene where he's like it's ironic that Adam's always being conscientious of animals and kind of a that sort of nature thing, and then he swerves. Well, in the script it's him that swerves, but I guess in the movie it's Barbara. But that they initially tried to swerve to save the dog, but it's the dog standing on the board that he steps off and they fall off in the river. And it was a lot more gruesome, and I guess initially it was going to be a lot darker about their bridge scene. And then yeah, how they come home and they seem to be like they just kind of walk in their door and the fire lights up in the fireplace. And that's also what I think they in the script anyway, they find the book, the handbook for the recently deceased. And I thought that, and then it's really strange. They
yeah.
begin to realize after a little while when her fingers catch on fire and are burning like little candles, Barbara, and then, well, she discovers that, and then the book and the lack of reflection, and and they sew her arm back on in the script, which I thought was really dark. They
Wow.
fixed her arm. Yeah. So it's like a whole different script because Michael McDowell was a horror sci-fi writer. He wrote
Okay.
this book called The Elementals too, and it was his story, and Tim Burton picked it up, and it's really cool because I guess initially Beetlejuice was going to be Sammy Davis Jr., and he was supposed to be like a leather-winged demon. And I thought that was really odd. So they really lightened it up. And I guess initially Michael Keaton didn't even want the role, but Tim
Wow.
Burton kind of David Geffen talked Tim Burton into casting Keaton, and then they talked him into it. And at first he wasn't interested, but then they gave him a lot of liberty, and he kind of created like all of the the mannerisms himself. He developed the character of Beetlejuice. It was like his full character development. It showed a lot of talent, and from there, Tim Burton goes to work with him on Batman.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't looked into the background so much, but that is really neat, and that's interesting when that happens. With movies, one of the things that kind of reminds me of going back to comic books a little bit here. People might not know that Hugh Jackman was not the original actor that was supposed to be Wolverine in the X-Men movies. There was some other guy, and he couldn't do it at
Yeah,
the last minute, and so they had to rush to find someone, and they got Jackman. And now you just think of those movies, especially those first, 5 or 6 or whatever. It's him, It's hard to,
iconic. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And like Keaton, he's iconically Beetlejuice and Batman. Actually, he really shines. And I'm trying to think of Sammy Davis Jr. as Beetlejuice. I mean, I can't believe it almost was. And it's really interesting too, because Sammy Davis Jr., he has kind of a lot of people may not know it, but he has kind of a dark history, like of like with Jane Mansfield and everything, that they were dabbling a little
Mm.
bit in the occult. So I think that's really strange because they were going to cast Beetlejuice himself as a type of almost more like a diabolical, more than just a trickster and a shyster, but more of like a diabolical character. And his character, the character of Beetlejuice, is, I think, it's so weird about his background too. Like when you get a little bit more information about his character, about who he is, the bioexorcist, and how he came to be even dead in the world of it, is really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and so yeah, it is. It's really, excuse me, it's amazing. Um, yeah, I couldn't believe that when I first found out that it was, the same guy that played Batman was, that was Beetlejuice. That did not compute for a while, as a kid.
Yeah,
So, but yeah,
yeah,
but
and
go ahead. I'm sorry.
just his iconic black and white suit, like how he's a prisoner too, like of the afterlife. He's like a civil servant,
Yeah.
and to Juno, like I guess it's mentioned just briefly, and it comes out more in the cartoons and stuff, that he and that insinuates that he was a suicide, and I thought that was really dark,
Mm.
very dark. That I guess suicides in the Beetlejuice world and that in the Nether world, they wind up being civil servants of the system there. And so it's revealed in the script that he had some kind of it was over a love loss. It's very sad, and
Mm.
it's a yeah. So anyway, so we have that little detail, which I think is very interesting about his character. He also kind of talks about like that he's like 600 years old. He gives
Yes.
us that
Yes.
too in the
Yeah.
storyline. I thought that was so strange. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Um, and even the part when he talks about later on, he talks about having to go into all these colleges and schools and stuff. But
Juilliard,
yeah,
Harvard. Yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting. Also,
I
you
thought it was creepy. Go ahead.
you bring up the book, the handbook, recently deceased. That is a key part in that movie, and I find that interesting that's actually a physical object that comes
Yeah.
from the other side.
It is because Lydia finds it.
Right?
Yeah. And she's really interesting too. Her whole character. I think I guess we should sorry, I drove it a little off topic.
That's
Going
okay.
back to when they die, when they realize they've passed away and they find the handbook for the recently deceased, it's described as being like a tax, you know, uh, like a huge, book, binder, 3-ring binder. And it has information in there about like the different abilities of the ghosts in the netherworld. And it's just, it brings up, and when they, and I think it's really interesting too when Adam, in the script, Adam walks out the door and he finds himself in the sand world, where the sandworms are. And that part's really interesting too, because they start to all the different little aspects of how they realize, what kind of situation they're in. The audience is learning with them, about what the afterlife might look like. At least it is in this world, how it was presented. And so when they find themselves in that sand world, it's there's a lot of detail there that's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I believe it wasn't it even. I think it was Saturn was the world that
Yeah,
that that they supposedly went to because Beetlejuice calls back to it later on in the movie. So,
yeah. I thought that was really weird. It's mentioned in the script that it's Titan,
mm,
a moon of Saturn, and that you're seeing Saturn and Jupiter. But then in the
oh,
movie, you're kind of left to wonder, either they're on Saturn and they're looking at Jupiter and Mars, or they're on the moon of Saturn and they're looking at Saturn and Jupiter. So I thought that was really strange. And then the sandworms themselves are kind of based off it actually says in the script, like something you'd see out of the movie Dune. So Dune had already come out previously to that. And the sandworms themselves were and that comes up a lot too. And also, sorry, I just wanted to mention this one thing. In the script, not a sandworm, it's like a big mechanical cog, like in a timekeeping, like a clock reference, and it's tearing up the space and time all around Adam when he steps out the door. And he just so barely manages, because Barbara pulls him back in to not be annihilated by this cog in this, you know, clock of some kind, rolling around, tearing up space and time or something. It's really
wow.
strange.
It is. Yeah. So I see here in the chat, Matt's all asked if it's a kids movie or not, which is pretty ironic in a way. Because he does mention there are some adult jokes in that I didn't understand as a kid, and yeah, the same with me. Um, but oh wow, yeah, and
I
APOC,
think it is. I think it definitely is a kids movie, like in a way. I mean,
yeah,
it almost shouldn't be, but it totally was. I remember, you know, I think the kids shouldn't probably watch it. It's really dark, but it's fun though in a way. And they created the toy line, and it went on to become the animated series, that was very popular.
right, yeah, and APOC mentions that the husband and wife, Barbara and then Adam. She mentions Adam as a reference, which is interesting too.
Yeah,
So
I think that the Barbara and Adam are supposed to be the idyllic couple. The only thing missing is that they don't have a child yet. The real estate agent keeps bothering them because the house has been in their family for generations. And it's never mentioned why they don't have children, but the real estate agent, it's this large Victorian home that's been in the family for generations, and they're full of furniture and all of this. And she's trying to convince them to, sell it. And so when they die, of course, she takes the opportunity
yeah,
and
yeah,
to get, because it's worth a whole lot of money on the market, supposedly in the world. And the Dietzes, that's when the Dietzes
Y-
come into the scene, the
yes,
Dietz family.
and it's funny because
There's
sorry. Oh, I was just gonna say it's funny because I felt like I wondered if the real estate agent was related to Adam somehow, because she mentioned she decorated the place herself, and
Oh, that's interesting.
and the way I don't know, I felt almost like maybe she was related to either. I felt like more like Adam, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because when everyone's the Maitlands are trying to redecorate the house, and then even the Deeches, when they get to the house, they comment on how how weird it looks, and then the real estate agent stops by with a key to the attic, which is where the Maitlands go to hide
Yeah.
from the Deeches, and but yeah, the real estate agent mentions, if you need any decorating tips, I did that all myself.
Right. I don't know. I don't know. I read the script, the original script
Mm.
by Michael McDowell, and then and I remembered the movie and everything. I don't know about the real estate agent. It's hard to say. But the Dietzes, that really that's what stirs everything up. The Dietz family, when they come in, that's when the Maitlands realize they have to get rid of them because they can't stand, living in the same house, but they can't leave the house. So that's when Beetlejuice, I think, that's how he comes up. And it's really weird about Beetlejuice because of the card and everything, that there's no address, there's no number or anything. And he's kind of like an outcast from Juno, doing his own thing, like a rogue spirit. And we learn about the curse of his name and everything. He can't say his own name. We don't learn a whole lot more about the curse he's under, but we just know that he has to be conjured by the calling his name 3 times. And his name Beetlejuice, it means the hand of Orion. I thought that was really interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, and also the fact that he's trapped in that, because that's what I liked about that whole. You mentioned the model and how the movie starts with the model, with the spider being on the house and the model, and Adam picking up. That's where Beetlejuice is hiding, is in the
Yeah,
model.
yeah, it says and in the script too for Beetlejuice, which is really strange. On the grave itself, it says Swallowtail and Beetlejuice.
Mm.
So I thought that was really kind of reminds me of the snake swallowing his own tail thing. There's a lot of big references. And then the fact that Beetlejuice appears as a snake too at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was strange.
Yep, because Barbara and Adam learn about Beetlejuice from Juno because they go to the underworld, basically the netherworld, which is a whole other thing that is fascinating to me. I mentioned this before. The idea of this office, this otherworld office. And it makes me wonder, and we were talking about this a little bit the other night in Troubled Minds radio. And it was so funny that this kind of came up in that show, even though that wasn't directly about this, but it kind of came up. I wonder if there are these kinds of offices all around the world, and they're located in abandoned or mostly empty, maybe not even abandoned, but buildings that are only used for brief periods of time. And maybe that's why there's weird activity in them. Is there these offices or these locations, these focus areas, or almost like miniature cities, for the netherworld.
Hmm. Yeah, the waiting room.
Yep. Yeah.
It's really creepy too about the scene of the janitor in the room of lost souls,
Hmm.
like all of the ghosts who have been exorcised. And you learn that like exorcism for the spirits there is like death for the dead,
Yep.
basically. It puts them into kind of they're just like a nothing, a wisp of themselves. And then we learn more about that too, the exorcism thing, when Otho comes into the scene too and does the exorcism and conjures them up, and they begin to decay right in front of everyone. And then, they're able to stop it, and they don't go all the way, so that's good. But with the Maitlands, when Otho conjures the Maitlands.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's really interesting. Also, it's almost funny with him because he comes into the movie as an interior decorator, designer, But then you find out he has this connection to paranormal that he doesn't really talk about, which is, where have we heard that
So
before?
strange. Yeah, it's very strange. Like and then too the way the Maitlands, as hard as they try to scare, be scary, they're not able to be scary enough. Like stretching their faces out, and they learn that their faces are malleable, their bodies are malleable in the afterlife.
Yeah.
I thought that was weird.
And it's interesting though because they start out wanting to frighten the family away, but that's kind of when they get to start getting to know Lydia. And
Yeah,
she almost becomes in a way like their daughter in certain ways. She feels a lot
yeah,
closer to them than she does to her actual father and her stepmom.
yeah, and it's in the story of it, her mom is still back in New York City, and there's just been a divorce. And then in the cartoon or the musical, I can't remember which one, it's alluded to that she's passed away.
Mm.
Evelyn, Evelyn Deeds. And so, and the dad too, he's a strange character, but the mother really plays a big part in it. And she pretty much comes in with this whole thing of, even though she's from New York City, she's like totally this Soho thing. But she comes there and to this little sleepy town and is gonna just, completely tear out the whole inside, got this house and redecorate it to be as modern. And it's described as being just really ugly
Yeah.
decorating. And, you know, they can't and it's very interesting. And then with Otho too, but so I think we first see like something very interesting whenever they get possessed basically and are like somewhat possessed and ventriloquist like the ventriloquist thing
Yes.
doing the ventriloquism.
Yep.
But anyway though, when the Maitlands take over and force them to sing those songs, the Banana Boat
Yep.
song.
Yep. And then do the dance and everything. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's so strange how that pops into it. I don't know. And you start to see that it's very dark though. They levitate, like Lydia levitates at one point, and that's very strange. And then you have their mouths being taken over, and they're being puppeted too, like forced to dance against their will.
Yep. Yeah.
Thought that was really weird.
It seems like Barbara and Adam they slowly learn what they can do throughout the movie. And even Lydia too. I mean, when she starts getting in contact with that side of things, she's already can see them. But then by the end of the movie, yeah, you bring up a good point. With the movie, after after the big, the I guess you could say the summoning and everything, or the exorcism, or however you want to call that. After everything, and that part really is interesting to me because I wonder, it seems like Beetlejuice, once he's free, he has a lot of power. Like he does not.
Well, yeah, and he wants to marry
Yeah,
Lydia,
and he does not.
but he's already been. And
Sorry.
it's really strange.
Yeah,
No, go
and he
ahead.
does not seem like most of the time you will not get spirits that have that kind of power usually. From what I've heard, it's very, very, very rare, and even then, that is extreme. I wonder how much of that was meant to be almost like a connection, like with like psychically, like if a lot of that was
Mhm.
somehow maybe there was still physical elements to it, but if it was because I've had interaction with spirits before in different cases. My first experience, I believe, I had interaction where I shouldn't have seen this whatever this was across the basement from me in my aunt and uncle's house because it was so far away and I'm legally blind, but I could see her facial features just fine. I
Mhm.
wonder how much of that plays into what Beetlejuice is able to do. If part of that is, in people's minds in a way too.
He can do a lot. Like he has like a whole slew of powers that are revealed, and I didn't write them down or anything, so I couldn't go off. But um we know that he's been there before, like he's gotten out before, but he is cursed. He's only mentions his own name. He only says his own name in the cartoon once.
Mm.
And so part of the curse is he can't say his own name, so he can't tell people how to conjure him, but he has those cards written out. And he's a bioexorcist, so he specializes in terrifying people, scaring them away that are troubling other ghosts, which is he's also kind of a shyster because his whole plan is to get a living mortal basically to marry a mortal girl. And I think that's really interesting about his character. And you have Lydia depicted in the wedding scene in a red dress. I thought that was very strange. But also what's very strange is that when he pulls out that finger and she's got the finger with
Oh,
a ring on,
yes.
a wedding ring, insinuating that he's done this before and she meant nothing to him, he says that. But it's so, I don't know, it gets you to wondering about his character is so it's pretty wild stuff.
It is. Yeah.
And I don't know why why they were so fixated on this whole thing with the Beetlejuice thing and the spelling of it and everything is it's really odd and contrary because like in the credits it's spelt out proper Beetlejuice and it's only mentioned as being beetle as in a beetle like whenever Lydia's playing charades, like when they're playing charades
Right.
and he gets her to yeah,
Yep. And that's when she kind of figures out.
because otherwise it'd be because people would mispronounce it otherwise. I
Right.
think some people can't. Like, if you just read it, you'll mispronounce it.
Well, and Adam did near the beginning, that card.
But it didn't matter.
Right.
It's really
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
wow. Yeah. True. It didn't matter because he did say it like 3 times, but he said it the wrong way. That's interesting. Huh.
That's really
Yeah.
but trying to think the symbology of like going into the whole Saturn thing, the sandworms and all of that, and the lost souls and the waiting room and the whole world that they've built up. The sandworm thing, I mean, what happens to these ghosts? Like they're already dead, but somehow there's something worse than that. I think the alluding to that is really eerie. Like if they're exorcised, it's like a type of death of its own, or they can be eaten by the sandworms, and that's some kind of terrifying thing. And then Beetlejuice too, he's changed by the witch doctor. Like he gets his head shrunk when he steals his number and placed in line. And I thought that was really weird too, like how they can be permanently affected in a way.
Huh. Yeah. And also that like again that gets back to I've heard this idea before in another fiction of the whole thing about like when you're spirit, it's partly about like perception and belief, and that can have an effect on spirits and even physical things around them. Even when maybe it wouldn't for but then again that gets into consciousness and people there's all kinds of ideas about that we can kind of do all that kind of stuff too, and if we kind of figured out how to do that. But I wonder if it just comes down to partly he was in the office, he was sitting right next to the guy that had the shrunken head, and he felt something being sprinkled on him, and it was the guy on the other side of him, and I wonder if part of it was like a perception thing, on his own part, and then but others around him too. I wonder how much that plays into all that.
I don't know. But, it's so he's obviously like he's in some kind of internment of some sort. Like with the I think, because of his suicide thing. So there's all this mythos going on with the storyline. Like I said, it's very dark. It's a very dark comedic thing, but it was going to be even darker. So I'm glad it kind of went the way it did. So it's kind of more fun. But I don't know. The whole thing is, oh, my heater. I am up in the attic, but I have a space heater, so it's kind of nice.
There we go. APOC mentions Beetlejuice. Yeah, that's the the way you spelled it there in the chat, APOC, that's how basically that, and that's interesting. That I guess I hadn't caught that before. That's the only way that has any power. I wonder if it has to do with maybe the way Juno did the. I wonder if it was Juno that did the curse, and it was that if she
Yes.
was the one that arranged that, so it was because otherwise, if he went by the other spelling, the traditional spelling, no one would get that, and they didn't get that, you know. But if you take it apart, beetle and juice, those are two. But then again, that doesn't make sense because then that make it easier also for people to free him. So
Right.
that's almost that's weird. There's a lot of things in this movie that are kind of almost contradictory in a way, or could be. So, other thing.
Yeah, it's spelled Beetlejuice on the. Oh,
Okay.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say the other thing I thought was interesting was near the end. You know, it ends with the Maitlands living inside the model house, the model version of the house.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, this whole movie they've been learning about what they can do, and it shows them, having powers similar to Beetlejuice. In a way, not quite as extreme, but then again, they haven't been, spirits as long.
Deceased.
Yeah,
Yeah. Maybe they mastered the handbook.
it could be.
Makes you wonder about that. I don't know.
Well, it's funny because when they were in the other side office and they were waiting for Juno, their caseworker, this is the other thing that I think is interesting about that whole other side, is that while they were there, time was going at a different pace because when they got back to the house, 3 months had supposedly passed.
Yes. And in the script, in the script that's written up, when Adam goes outside the door and he's in Saturn or he's in on Titan, Barbara says he was gone for 2 hours, but to him it seemed like it was a few minutes.
Yeah, that he says that in the movie.
So time's working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting as well. And that's kind of somewhat taken from thoughts about how, we don't know how some or maybe even all spirits, how time works to them. Because they're not necessarily, they're not in a physical state anymore necessarily. So.
Yeah, we only see them affected whenever Otho conjures them into the living, visibly conjures them up. When he does that seance and he conjures up Adam and Barbara and they appear in their wedding garb, they begin to age instantly. And it's as if if it wasn't stopped, that they would have been just those lost souls, these wisps of themselves. They would be no longer what they were in the afterlife, which is just apparently waiting. Because the waiting room thing, apparently it's mentioned that they get 3 visits with their caseworker, so to speak. The spirits have a caseworker they're assigned when they go to that waiting room, and they get like 3 visits. And so I don't know how long that takes, because there's like they pull out that strip of paper and it's like 9 billion or 9 trillion something or other, the number, I don't remember what it was, but it's this incredibly long number. So it could take forever just waiting. And apparently they just wait at their homes or something, because they aren't able to even go to the bridge again. They have to stay in that house. Yeah. There's mention though too.
I just want to mention the chat here. APOC says a few things here that are interesting ideas. She mentions Adam built the world, and then they got they got stuck in the world. The waiting room office was God somehow, or related to God. Beetlejuice was the devil, maybe, and she puts LOL. And Mike, hello Mike from Troubled Minds Radio. Mike says he looks kind of devilish, to be fair, referring to Beetlejuice. So
Yeah. Yeah, he's got the spiders and bugs in his pockets, and he's rotting and everything. It's very
yeah,
ugly. And initially, he was gonna be like a leather winged
mm,
demon by Sammy Davis Jr. So, and Sammy Davis Jr. has kind of like, it would have been a much slower, more like, you know, suave, devilish thing. But then with Keaton taking it over, it becomes comedic, but also he takes on like this, used car salesman shyster vibe, and it's more in the electric hair and everything. And yeah, I think he's a rogue spirit. Like he was a suicide. He was somehow, like he's bound to be a civil servant to the system and the afterworld. And he was Juno's assistant, and Juno plays this huge role there. I didn't do a lot of research into the mythos of her character, but it's interesting that he was her own personal assistant until he was such a troublemaker. He was exiled and he became a rogue, you know, salesman of his services as just the bioexorcist of the living.
yeah. And if you think of, I mean, they really are. You think of everything that Juno is part of there. That seems very much that whole netherworld. It seems very focused on order, and so it doesn't surprise me that once Beetlejuice got there, he couldn't take it, he couldn't handle it, and
Right.
so he so they had to get him out of there, but they couldn't really destroy him because he's already a ghost. You know, all they could do was kind of threaten him with going to Saturn, basically. Um, and
Yeah.
again, that gets back to or Titan. That gets back to what happens when these I wonder if those worms are kind of because I mean if you think of like a worm or a snake, it's a tube. It's like a tunnel in a way.
Hmm.
I wonder if
Right.
there's some kind of like gateway
Gateway.
they get and this is kind of again this is kind of again everyone this is kind of dark, but these sandworms eat the spirits. Maybe they do get somehow broken
Hmm.
down in the sandworm, and that gets reintroduced back into the spiritual ecosystem somehow.
I don't
Um,
know. I don't know. But if Adam would have, if they left the house, that would have happened. They would have been eaten by the sandworms, or in the script, torn up by that wheel of time thing.
mm,
And in the script too, Barbara learns that she can go into mirrors. And when she does, the room is, of course, it's a mirror image. But outside of that image, it's just
mm.
darkness. Yeah. So I thought, so there's all kinds of alluding to some kind of dark dimension that even the dead are afraid
Hmm.
of.
I did get the sense from the movie that Barbara maybe was had more access to abilities sooner than Adam did.
She was really
Yeah,
bold. And, but Adam was
that's
really
true.
technical. Like he was trying to figure out the book, understand the manual. He's flipping through it and everything all the time. And but she kind of seems to fall into things
Hmm.
naturally. Like she's naturally learning that she can go into the mirrors, she can do this and that. And he's presented as, oops, as kind of like the character himself. When you think about that, he likes to build this miniature version of the world. Maybe the bigger sense of the world is too much to handle, and so he likes the micro version of it. And he's so meticulous that, I mean, even Beetlejuice himself is somehow in that world itself too, in the model of the town. So I'm not sure if Beetlejuice himself was in the town itself, and then therefore because of the meticulous detail, because even he must have put that cemetery gravestone there. He must have put that tombstone there. I would assume for Beetlejuice, because it says Beetlejuice in his own little model town. So I think that's very odd.
It is. I almost to answer a question here in the chat here from APOC, all the doors to other places were in the office building, weren't they? Yes, but according to the handbook, people could make doors to get back to that office if they had to, which is also interesting. So yeah, but also getting back to Adam, that makes me think of him almost as a symbol for a creator.
Ah, yeah. And because like in the opening scene, like you have him reaching down into it's like the hand of God type of thing, putting it all in place. And so I don't know, but there's a lot of things revealed about his personality with that. Um, like enjoying having, the world in his hands, so to speak, so he can really look at it. It's very strange. And then the hardware store, it's all about building and stuff like that. There's a lot of symbology like that
Yeah,
going on. I'm losing my voice because I'm
it's
talking a
okay.
lot. You talk a lot.
Okay.
You talk for a
Well,
lot
I
for a
guess
little.
I can kind of go back over the movie again. Like I said, we kind of jumped around here a little bit, which is fine. But yeah, so the movie, like I said, starts off with the Maitlands. They go out and they basically they're coming back home from this hardware store that they own, and they try to avoid this dog. And then yeah, I love the point earlier, and they made about the dog being the one that ends up sending them into the water. I thought that was pretty. And then it barks at them
Yeah,
after too.
yeah. I go to save him, and he's the
Yeah,
cause of their death. It's really
and
dark.
so they get back to the house, and things start happening where they realize, maybe we did not make it out of there alive. And what's interesting is when you first see Beetlejuice, you don't see him clearly. He's looking at a newspaper, and it's basically there's a section in there, but it's not like a regular newspaper because it shows like an obituary section, but it says things like "Please welcome," welcoming people into the afterlife. And very dazed. They don't look like they're aware of what's going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's silly.
and that's when he kind of discovers them, but he doesn't act right away either. He waits until basically until after the Deetzes arrive.
Until
Right.
they need him.
And so that's when he starts leaving clues um about, hey, contact me. But like you said, he doesn't leave a number, there's nothing else. Um but that's also when as soon as the Deetzes get to the house, Lydia sees them, the Maitlands in the attic window.
One little clip. Initially in the script, it was going to be Lydia has a little sister.
Oh.
There's two daughters. And the little sister, her name's Kathy with a C, and she's 9. And she's the one actually that sees them. And she's the 9-year-old girl is the one who gets the key from the realtor. And she's the one who initially meets Adam and Barbara. But when they did the movie up, when they were rewriting it, after they dismissed Michael McDowell, who created the story, they decide to meld the two into just Lydia. And so I thought that was really
Yeah, and
interesting.
Lydia,
But initially,
yeah,
it's a child.
Lydia is this very much kind of, she calls herself strange and unusual in the film. I don't know if you want to kind of describe her appearance a little bit, Jen, because you'd be better at that than I would, maybe.
Sure. She's depicted as a typical solemn teenager. She has pointy black bangs and a half ponytail on almost every account that she's shown. She wears dark clothes and is very melancholy. And actually, in the original script, too, because she's so unhappy, she thought like they were going to have her die in a fire. It's very dark. I'm so
Well,
sorry. But they're going to have her die in a fire. And then she was going to be with the Maitlands from then on and be very happy. But they took that out, of course, because it would be insinuating that, to teenagers,
right.
to young people, that it might be a good, so I think it was too dark. So they changed that,
Yes.
thankfully.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's very melancholy. We're not really sure exactly why she's so sad. If it's just a typical teenage brooding thing, but she's not very happy. And she becomes happier actually with the spirits, with once the Maitlands and everything when they kind of step in too to give her that more nurturing feeling, not provided by her stepmother and
Yeah.
father.
Yeah. And so they meet her again, like we said, by trying to scare the family, and it doesn't go well. Actually, that's the funny thing too, is that when they're at some point they get they use sheets. They put sheets over themselves. Adam and Barbara do, and they go to try to scare the family.
Right.
And the dad, Charles Dietz, does see them in the sheets, but he thinks it's Lydia. But he does
Right.
see them, which makes me wonder if the sensitivity somehow came from, maybe his line of the family. Maybe even if it skipped a
Oh yeah.
generation or something,
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it. It's definitely worth a rewatch, and I wonder if they're ever going to make like a part 2 or anything. I don't know, but the cartoon series went on forever. There's tons about it, and then so I don't know. They did a musical,
Yeah.
It's still hanging around, and it's such a potent character that, I mean, people still reference it pretty frequently. I mean, like you said, it's been brought up several times just in the conversations with the different streams
Yeah. Yeah.
online here. And oh, I have I might have to pop off here. I think I need to probably go check on
It's
my.
okay.
I'm so sorry, but I
No
probably should.
problem. Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I'll cover the last little bit, and then but thank you again for volunteering, and we'll do this again sometime soon.
Thank you so much for inviting me to hang on here and chat with you about it.
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
glad we did.
Yes, thank you.
It was very fun.
Have a good night.
Thank you too.
You too.
Have a great night.
So, again, like I said, I'll cover the last bit of this movie here. And so anyway, like I said, the Maitlands are hiding from the Deeches, and that led to really just the end of the movie. We kind of did describe it here and there, but also I almost feel like now it might be good to have some of you all go check it out more in detail if you want to actually hear out, see how it all goes. There's a lot more to it than I think we could even cover in even an hour. I mean, an hour and a half, 2 hours. But there's just so much in there. I found the idea of this office fascinating. I have this idea at some point. I want to do a story about, like, a more serious story about that kind of office and like day-to-day activities there. Just what it would be like. I think that could be fun. But yeah. So thank you all for being here tonight and for sticking with us here. As like I said, we had so many. I don't even know what happened. So many technical difficulties, and I still can't. Like I said, I still can't get this one app to close down, and I have no idea why. But like I said, but yeah. So anyway, I think that'll do it for tonight. Like I said, I appreciate everyone being here. All all the chat. Yeah, we had to reboot, and it was it was a mess. I I almost did there, Mike. Mike is saying you say some bad words while it's happening. Usually helps him. Yeah, yeah. I was thinking him. That's for sure. But you know, I was okay. I just felt bad more for everyone else that was here waiting. Because I do know tech stuff happens. But yeah. Yeah, the task manager. And yeah, that's what I had to do to get the volume to come back to where I could click on it too. So, but we'll be back with next week with a full week of shows. Monday will be more. Okay, then select the program. Okay, I'm getting some more help here from Mike. I owe a lot to everyone in the Mike and his community there. A lot of my guests have come to the show through Mike's community, through Troubled Minds, and I really appreciate that. But yeah, so next Monday I'll be back to do true paranormal stories from the web. Next Tuesday and Wednesday, there'll be more true ghost stories from the web. Thursday will be another book review. I haven't decided on what that's going to be yet. And then I will let you know. We do have plans for Friday, but I just want to confirm before I say again. But there will be a show next Friday, and I'm sure it'll be great. So thank you all for being here, and for being here for so much longer than we planned. But have a good night, and I'll talk to you all on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care.